Hi there. I invite you once again to get nerdy with me with astrology. Once again, I'm picking on JLo, not picking on her, but just using her chart as an example because I just did that and it's fun to do and it just kind of remained on my mind. So, what I want to talk about today is what's called precession. We are in a galaxy. The galaxy is in motion. When you are born, you get a birth chart that looks like this. This is JLo's birth chart. And everything is frozen in time. So this is a snapshot of the sky when or around when JLo was born, because as I said in the last video, I never trust a 12 o'clock birth time, although 12 o'clock birth times are what I use when I do not know the time that someone was born, because it gives you a ballpark, of where the sun is, as well as a ballpark of where the moon is. For people who don't have birth times, the moon moves about 12 degrees a day. So this tells me that this is in the middle of where the moon could possibly be for someone who doesn't have a birth time. So it could be at 23 Scorpio, as far back as 23 Scorpio, or as far forward as 6 Sagittarius. I digress. So we're in a galaxy. The galaxy is in motion. Birth charts are a snapshot of the sky. However, the galaxy keeps moving. And so when you are new to astrology and you look at transits, I'm about to show transits, so it's about to get more complicated looking, but don't panic. Boom. That's the current sky. So this is JLo's chart. This is the sky right now, or rather, the outer circle is the sky right now. So, anyway, this sky is in motion. There's degrees and minutes here, degrees and minutes, and the minutes are closer to the inside. It can get confusing if you're not used to seeing it. But basically, the degrees are of the sky right now, whereas this birth chart is of the sky back then. And so it has moved a bit. Not a lot, but a bit. So here's the point I want to make the most. So if JLo were to come talk to me today and I did not know about precession, I would look at this Pluto transit, and I'm focusing today on Pluto, which is down here in the 4th house, and the sun, which is up here in the 10th house. I would be focused on, in this conversation, I'm focused on the Pluto transit to the sun, because any transit to your sun is the most major thing that you have going on regardless. But I would think, if I didn't know about precession, that this was already an exact transit, because this R means that Pluto is currently retrograde in the sky, and if it's at 1 degree and 45 minutes versus 1 degree and 33, so 45 is bigger than 33. Pluto already, quote unquote, hit, so and now it's heading back to, I'm going the wrong way, it's heading back to, quote unquote, hit again, supposedly on June 22nd. So here you can see 133, that's a match, that's a direct transit. And in this, I'm showing the grid as well. Grids are so useful if you are an astrologer who is learning to read transits. This isn't a full grid, obviously, it's cutting off a bit. But see this 0, 0 way over here on the right with Pluto to the sun? So the vertical are JLo's planets, and the horizontal are the transiting planets. And when you see something here, that means that there's a transit of some sort. So she's got Saturn real close to her Venus, 7 minutes, and Pluto at 0, 0 on June 22nd. But let's also just look at present day. And this is a snapshot of her transits present day with a non-precess chart. We have not accounted for the fact that the solar system has moved. And so, since her birth. Okay, so grid, chart, and a supposedly exact transit. Rob Hand, one of my favorite authors, talks about in his book Planets in Transit how the mathematical formula for precessing something. So let's do math together, and I apologize in advance. I'm okay at math, I'm not great at it. So, handy dandy calculator. Here's the formula. You take the person's age in years, you multiply it by 5, you divide it by 6, and then that will give you the number of minutes that you need to add to everything in the chart, basically. So, it's 2024. She was born in 1969. We're taking this number, we are multiplying it by 5, we're dividing it by 6. So it's about 46 seconds. So I'm going to round up, so this math is imprecise, but it gives us a much better ballpark. So 45, or let's call it, I said it was 46, so let's say it's 46. 46 minus 33 is 13. So 2 degrees and 13 minutes, if I did that correctly, because remember that minutes only go up to 60 seconds. So 2 degrees and 13 minutes is what we're looking for. Now we'll ask ourselves, remembering that there's basically no way that this is an accurate birth chart. So we're being exact with a fake chart, which I actually prefer because we're not actually reading for JLo. But let's see, we're going to go back in time because Pluto is retrograde, and we're looking for Pluto to get as far as 2 degrees and 13 minutes. And does it get there? No. So the R came off. I was going on 7-day intervals. So in April, it got to about 2 degrees and 6 minutes. It's not an exact transit. So I'm using Pluto. There's no way this woman isn't feeling her Pluto transit, to be clear. It doesn't need to be, especially with Pluto, exact in order to be a valid transit. However, when there is exactitude, events tend to happen or things tend to go to extremes. And that's really the point that I want to make here. So this isn't just Pluto. I'm using it because it's easy. This is for everything. So you add 46 seconds to everything in the chart. And armed with that information, your transits are going to be correct. When you say things are probably going to happen, is when they will probably happen. If you get an idea of how someone will be feeling at a certain time, and you get the exact transit right, you're gonna be spot on 97-98% of the time. There are some people who just don't react to transits in a way that you might anticipate, and you can't really control for that. But if you want to be a good astrologer, you have to do this type of math. So you can see, even with this non-exact transit, this isn't a 0-0, right? It's not close. It's 32. That's a significant ways off for a planet like Pluto. So now I want to say I'm a lazy person, and I'm also very used to this software that I'm using, which is called Ephemeris. I learned that I can switch to a sidereal chart because tropical, and this is tropical, this is the Western astrology stuff. Western astrology doesn't account for precession unless you do the math, but sidereal, which is Eastern astrology, does. The caveat is you can't mix the Eastern astrology principles with the Western astrology. You have to really keep a hard line between the two. But I also, just before I switch to sidereal, I want to show you when Pluto gets to 2 degrees and 13 minutes. And it's going to take me a little while. We're close. I've gone too far. But it is February 2025, early February 2025. So keep that in mind. And again, these aren't exact transits, right? You don't see the zeros. But stay tuned. All right. This is a sidereal chart. It's just the setting. I think a lot of softwares have this. Sidereal accounts for precession, so it accounts for the movement of the solar system. But what it does is it messes up all of the numbers in the chart because, and I'll just toggle back so you can see real quick, 1 and 3 becomes 3 and 5. What is that even? She's quote unquote Virgo rising. You can't mix these things. So if you are doing readings or looking at someone else's chart, look to make sure that you know which one you're using, because I do this to get mathematically accurate transits. I don't use sidereal for anything else. It's just, when's that thing gonna hit? So here you can see a non-mathematically exact transit, and it also hasn't hit yet, right? So 3 and 37 versus 3 and 3, and it's retrograde. So when does this get to 337? Oh, no, I'm still 313, 327, February 11th. So the math that I'm going to say that the math that I was doing with adding the seconds was a little bit fuzzy, but you can see we're really close. So February 6th versus February 10th, really close, too exact, using sidereal. And I trust sidereal more than I trust doing math and adding things up. So I really, if you want the quick and dirty way to see when transits are exact, I recommend that you do this or start getting really good at adding a certain number of minutes to all of your charts. But this, it gives you a sense of how close things are truly, and it'll make you a much better astrologer. And so I just, when I originally fell in love with astrology and I realized this stuff actually worked, I was using an app, and there is no app that I know about that accounts for precession. If there is one, tell me, and if one comes online, I would love that, because apps are a great way to learn stuff. In my experience with an app, it just had a list of transits, and I had no idea how much importance to assign anything. Generally, when you're looking at this grid, this is kind of in order of how, well, not, it's kind of in order of importance, honestly. So this line here, the first thing that I look at when I do a reading is what is this section, what's happening with the heavy hitters. Because if there's stuff, that's what we're going to talk about first, or that's what I'm going to assign the most time to, because things on the other side of this line are transits that are going to last hours to maybe a day or a couple of days, whereas everything from Saturn on out is a lengthy process type of transit, which I learned over time. But anyway, I had this app and I was so excited, and I thought that everything was magical. And at the time, I had a Pluto transit to Venus, and I was miserable, and I thought that Pluto was the main thing that was causing the problem, which it turned out it wasn't. It was hardly the only thing, but I blamed Pluto. And so this app was telling me that I had 9 months left on the clock. And so I thought, I can wait 9 months and then it'll go away and then my life will be better. Well, guess what? The fact that it was not accounting for a precession meant that not only was it not 9 months, I still had a year and a half on the clock, and I was never going to know that. I would never know that during the time of the transit because I didn't figure it out for years. So that if I had not gotten more into astrology and learned a lot really fast, first, it would have given me false hope that things would work out when they didn't. And second, um, I might have just discarded, hey, astrology doesn't work, and I would have walked away and I would have been salty about it for the rest of my life. So I'm glad that I continued learning, and I'm glad that I figured this out. But my concern is that people who genuinely and sincerely want to learn will get caught up in something like this and conclude that it doesn't work. It does work if you do it right. So, this is one of the main ways to do it right, and it's either cumbersome math or switching back and forth between tropical and sidereal. I'm not saying that this is perfect. I am saying that this is a really lazy way to get accurate. You just have to remember, especially when you have sidereal going, that you're looking at the grid with what the transits are rather than looking at the chart and talking about, oh, the sun is in Cancer, because we know that J-Lo is a Leo. We know her sun's in Leo. We know all of this is wrong in terms of the degrees and the minutes and the signs. One other thing that that an app would never take into consideration are conjunctions. So I have been focused on the fact that J-Lo's sun is at 337, and then that Pluto is, when the exact hits are. But if you have planets that are next to each other or conjunct each other, you can't separate these energies. So the Pluto transit does not end when Pluto clears the sun. The transit ends when Pluto clears Mercury. And that's not going to be for a while. So I'm moving forward in years now. 516, not clear. 652, clear-ish. And I could scroll back and forth. But I won't, because that would make this unnecessarily long. But an app won't take into account, because right now they're just not smart enough. Plus, the definition of having Pluto opposite your sun and having Pluto opposite your Mercury are wildly different. But if you want to be a good astrologer, you have to read these things together when there are conjunctions. You'll still, even though the nature of the transit will likely change for her and the feelings will change, the overall vibe or mood or process of change that she's undergoing is not going to feel even a little bit complete until Pluto clears that Mercury. And honestly, I think it was Stephen Arroyo who said that that you don't really understand everything that happens during a Pluto transit for about a decade. So a decade after the fact, things make more sense. But that is me on my soapbox. This is how to make astrology work for you. Poor J-Lo. Honestly, no, with a Pluto transit to your sun, it is kind of a breaking down and rebuilding of your ego, but the problem is the breaking down part. And so that part of the process doesn't happen until you've had at least one direct hit with a Pluto transit. And you can have as many as 5. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5. It depends on basically your luck, but mathematically where Pluto is in the sky versus your planet. So yeah, she's in the middle of a process, but she is my guinea pig for explaining about apps and precession. And I'm sure I'll have more to say about something that I just said, but you know where to find me if you have questions, and thanks for watching.